Hello, and welcome to today's Coppice Dev stream. I hope you are all doing well. And for those of you who may not know me, I am Martin Pilkington. I run a small software company called M-Cubed Software, and when I am not doing contract work for Mac and iOS development, as I have been doing for the past 17 years, I am writing my own indie apps, including my app Coppice, which I'm developing here on this stream to show you how apps are developed, how you build Mac apps, build software, design them, ship them, and just help demystify things. And hopefully we can chat and I can answer questions and so on along the way. So today we are actually picking up a new feature for the next version of Coppice. Over the past few weeks we've been working on some image editing features where you can rotate images and crop them, but today we are actually going to go to the next big feature, which is going to be image linking and building the ability for people to actually link between images. But first, there have been some quite interesting things happening. So if I bring you over to the rather usual screen of Coppice being displayed, we actually have some rather interesting stuff to potentially read at your own leisure. I wrote up a blog post on the Coppice blog earlier this week detailing my adventures in streaming, in producing this stream and the reasons why I did it, where I got some of the inspiration from, and some of how I have built up the stream, some of my setup and how you can potentially do this yourself and get the music, and also about the YouTube channel where all the VODs for this stream are uploaded. I tried to get them up a day or two after the stream has finished, but all of the VODs, all the way from the first stream, are now available on YouTube on the Coppice channel. So if you want to read this post, you can just go to coppiceapp.com/blog and you can find it there. And this blog was actually picked up on this week's iOS Dev Weekly, where Dave wrote up about how you can find the stream, and also another stream that is available if you I believe it's Subdigital on Twitch, who also streams Swift Development as well, and it's good to see that there are more and more people starting to do streaming in this community, so that we can hopefully get more people out there and demystify it and help those who are new to the community, or those who are just looking for people to code along to as they're working. I also noticed Steve is in the chat, and he actually had his blog post this week be part of the comment for this week's iOS Dev Weekly. So congrats to Steve on not only getting a mention but getting the comment on this week's iOS Dev Weekly with his post on Catalyst. So if you haven't seen that, if you haven't seen that, make sure you go to this post to check out Steve's post on Catalyst and another way that you can actually build Mac apps. I also have managed to finally get some new emotes up. So for those of you that are subscribers, you now have access to these 4 emotes available in chat. There are some more coming. There is an angry emote that should be coming soon, and there is also I search for it by we have a ship it emote, animated emote, that should be hopefully coming as soon as Twitch approves it. So that should be available to subscribers hopefully in about a week or so, depending on how long it takes Twitch to look through it. So yeah, with all that housekeeping out the way, how is everyone in chat? What are you up to on this Saturday, which has been rather windy yesterday here and is now rather snowy this morning and this afternoon, and the sun has only just come out for the first time today. So how is it where you are? What are you up to today? And as always, if you have any questions about Mac development or what I'm doing at the moment, then feel free to post them in chat and I'll try to answer them as we go along. So let's get started having a look at Coppice and just reminding ourselves of where we were last time. So what we managed to do is we had finished implementing our cropping feature, where you can crop down a image, go back to view mode, and it's completely non-destructive cropping, but it also has full undo redo. And we've also got this working in the canvas as well. So we can go in here, start editing, and then we can start cropping. And again, when you go back to view mode, it's completely non-destructive and will actually resize. And that actually seems to be a bug. Interesting. So I drag that on and I crop down to there. Let me undo. Okay. The ones down here, it's because you have to, so the image controls down here take a little extra to show up, because if you just click and select, you have selected it, but you are not editing it. So it's the same here with this text page. You don't get the text editing controls until you actually click in and start editing. So the same here, I've clicked on it, and then I double click to start editing, and it actually starts showing this up here. Yeah, I wonder if there is some way, some tool that I can have that will actually highlight where I click, because I know when you do screen recording with QuickTime, it will actually do a circle around where you click, and that would be quite useful for the stream to show where I click and where I double click. Because yeah, that isn't particularly obvious there. Why that would, why it takes a little bit longer. I think I might have a look around and see if there's something that can do that for the next stream. So, hi Clemix, welcome to the stream. How are you? Right, so we seem to have a bug here where we are resizing this incorrectly when we restore from a crop. So 209 by 129. Now I'm going to make a guess that this is going to end up being double the size. Go on with crop, size it down, go there. Wasn't. I wonder if this is related to... I wonder if it's related to the fact that if you scale up and then you crop, and we move around time, and we go back. Okay, so we seem to have got... So when you crop and you move around, it should... Basically, if you scale up, and say you crop this area, but then you change the cropping to this area, it should maintain the same scale factor, and it seems we're not doing that. So we were going to start with a feature, but let's start with a little bit of bug fixing, because it's always fun going on a bit of a detective hunt, trying to figure out what is going wrong. So we are in the inspector here. If we need the actual canvas page, if our content size did change, and when that happened, we update this. So at a breakpoint now, we're going to delete this. We're going to drag our paragraph in, edit it, and we're going to crop it. So it is roughly about yay big. That is going to give us our new contents. Our new size is 104 by 59, which is correct. And our old size is 209 by 129, which is what we want. So the scale, aha, this is the thing. So this is where it is going wrong. So this works perfectly fine. We've got self.frame.width divided by old size.width. So if we print out self.frame, you'll see its size down here, 209 by 129. 209 by 129. So our scale factor is 1. So the new size, we set it and it is perfectly fine. But if we go back to the app, and we undo, what do we get? What is the old size? Okay, so that should be right. And self.frame should be right. But it is not. So what has happened here is the frame has changed. Right, so the frame has reverted, but the content size. Right, so what we probably want to do Right. Page content. So we actually have go and get the page, then we get the collection. Register and undo action. Model object. Let's have a look at the model object, which is model controller, and the model controller has an manager. So what we could do make it so that in these a bit, so model objects we can do public var undo manager, which actually optional because the model controller is and self.modelcontroller.undo manager, and then we are going to have content. We can do the same. Page.undo. And what we should be able to then do in our image page content is self.undo manager.begin undo. This should hopefully group all the changes. This may actually not work. Like, I'm only slightly believing that this will work, and what we may just need to do is another thing, which is if we're undoing, we ignore content size did change. No, manager dot beginning undo. So we're building real now. Yes, Steve. So the user scale on the canvas, what I'm trying to do is make it so it is independent. So when you crop, the actual scale size from the original size shouldn't change as you crop and as you undo. Now the problem there is that that works as you are cropping, but when you're undoing, it seems to be undoing the frame change of the canvas page, but then it's undoing the change of the crop rect, which is then firing off content size did change, which is then messing things up. Planning about consecutive declarations on a line. Oh, public func var does not work. Right. That is a perfectly fine error message. That consecutive declarations on the line must be separated by a semicolon is a terrible error message, and should probably almost certainly either not be displayed or be displayed below so that you read the first one and understand what has gone wrong. Hey, sometimes Swift, like compilers, it's like the main job of a compiler is to find errors in your code and prevent them. And it is so frustrating when those errors are not good, yet also understandable because generating good error messages is probably one of the hardest things to do in a compiler. But it's one of those things of, it's frustrating, but I fully understand why it is a big problem. It's just, it shouldn't be a problem by now. Surely we've had long enough and enough experience to actually make error messages be the priority, because it's like producing like the resulting code, okay, that's great. Optimization, okay, that's great. But error messages are what you work with every day. And that is by far the most important part of a compiler. And let's be honest, it isn't just Swift, pretty much every compiler fails at this pretty miserably. Of course, Swift, many compilers are much better than Swift, so Swift can do with a lot of improvement, but it's so frustrating that it's been around this long and it's still, the error messages are cryptic, and like you can potentially understand with Objective-C because it doesn't have as much information, but Swift has all this type information and all this additional information, and it was promised to make the tooling better, and it just seems to make it slower. Though interestingly, I have managed to have my first side-by-side comparison of compiling with Apple Silicon versus the Intel Mac that I'm on right now. For the contract work, I have access to just a plain M1 MacBook Pro, the one with the touch bar. I actually built the project on both machines. Now, if you look at the benchmarks, my iMac, it's got an Intel Core i9 9900K. So this is 8 cores, 16 threads. It can run at 3.6 GHz, turbo boost to 5 GHz. This, at the time I bought this, 2019, single core performance, it was the fastest Mac you could get. It was faster than the iMac Pro, faster than the Mac Pro, and it was about as good as a base Mac Pro in terms of just general performance. It took, let's say the M1, it probably did it in about 2/3 of the time compiling a clean build than this Intel thing. So this iMac that was top of the line was beaten out by the same chip that is in the iPad that is next to me, and it wasn't even close how much faster it is. So yeah, I am looking forward to when Apple releases some of the more high-end Apple Silicon Macs, so I can get either a high-end iMac or a Mac Pro and really see how fast these machines can go, especially with compiling, because that seems to be one of the biggest use case improvements over Intel. So hopefully that builds and runs, and we can see what this is like. So if I get rid of that, oh yeah, it's already cropped. Undo the cropping. That. Bring this on here. What we're going to do is we're going to crop it, make it small, go back. Okay, but that isn't working because it's still doing the same thing, it's just grouped them all together. So we'll leave the grouping in because that potentially use. But what we want to do in content size to change is guard self.undo manager dot is undoing our self.undo manager dot is redoing. No. If that equals true, I'd let stuff that, and we should. Okay, so if let manager, and then we'll do the guard dot false. False, else, third. So we don't want to do that if we're undoing a read. Yeah, you moved from an iMac building Objective-C project, Steve, to an M1 building Swift, and you don't believe the M1 is faster. Yeah, I mean, Objective-C could build incredibly fast. I mean, the compiler wasn't doing as much, but yeah, the performance of Swift tools is probably the biggest problem in terms of just Swift usability. It's not terrible if you are pure Swift. If you're mixing Swift and Objective-C, that seems to really slow things down a lot more. But yeah, hopefully they improve. I've seen some stuff where people are talking about various significant improvements in Swift's performance in the compiler. So we will see what goes on there over time. So let us drop this again. Go back. Undo, redo. Okay. So that works. If we scale this up and we move the crop over to there, and then we resize the crop. Perfect, so that's working. So let's that. So that is committed. But Steve, I will have an emote for that. I mean, once you've fixed a bug, then surely it's all ready to ship. In the meantime, there's also this emote. For when I'm particularly happy that I've managed to fix yet another bug in my own code. Because remember folks, we are software developers. We don't write features, we write bugs, and features just happen to appear along the way. So let's have a look at some designs for what we are building next, which is going to be this image linking feature. So with Coppice at the moment, for those of you who may not have seen it before, you have the ability to create links between pages. If I select here, you can see in here, this link links to page called Pages. Now, the text doesn't have to match this. You can, I mean, for example, I could create this, just select this text and this now links to pages as well. And if I click on this while in this view, it takes me to the pages page. So you can build up a sort of a wiki. But the key thing with Coppice is, if I click it on here, it opens it on the same canvas with an arrow pointing to it. Now, until now, you haven't been able to do that with images. You can link to images, but you can't link from images. So if you, for example, wanted to have a map of something, maybe it's a plan of a room, a map of, like, if you're using Coppice to build up information on a world, like I run a Dungeons & Dragons campaign and I use it to keep track of everything in the world. You could put a world map in and create links on it. Rather than just having a text list, you could have a map that shows these locations, and you click on the location, and then these images, then the pages branch off of it. So what we're going to do is add that functionality to images, and the way we're going to do that is via hotspots. So what you will be able to do is, when you are editing, we have V, which is view mode, C for crop mode, and H is going to be hotspot mode. When you're in hotspot mode, you'll be able to drag over hotspots. And these hotspots will be able to be rectangular, or for people who pay for the Pro version, you'll be able to do oval hotspots and polygon hotspots. So what we need to do is, I think what we need to do is determine all the stuff we need to work out for this. So let us bring up our trusty tot window. And for those who have never used tot is a fantastic little app by the Icon Factory. It's on Mac and iOS. I believe it's free on the Mac. And it can either live in your menu bar or appear here, and you can use it for keeping track of all sorts of things. I use it for keeping track of, for example, the release notes for a version of Coppice, which I could actually start preparing to write that up. I'll leave that for now. But what we can do is write up our to-do list. Hi Cody, I'm building my indie app, Coppice. It's a app for the Mac that lets you drag in text and images, link them together, and lay them out on a canvas so that you can see them all branching out in various directions with images and pages and so on, all linking together. And what we're specifically building right now is some image linking facilities, so that you can actually draw a hotspot over an image and turn that into an area you can click on to link to another page. So rather than just linking from text, you'll be able to link from images. So what I can do is add in, let's see if I can find an image to show you the sort of thing that I would really like to have. Let's drag this in, and if I drag it onto here, so this is the world map from my Dungeons & Dragons campaign that I'm running. And what the idea is with these hotspots is that, for example, here I have a town called Pinegrasp. I want to be able to go and drag a hotspot over that. And then whenever I click on that, it will open up a linked page to all the information on Pinegrasp. And from there, I can link out to all other stuff. I mean, potentially that could link out to the map of Pinegrasp. And then the map of Pinegrasp is another image page which has hotspots on, which then link out to all the various buildings inside there. So this is a really powerful feature. Another thing is I've thought of is if you are using Coppice to track decorating. So you're redecorating a room and you have a rough plan of the room, you've sketched it out. Maybe for bits of furniture, you can actually click and have it go to a list of furniture that you have looked at. So there's lots of potential here, and this is sort of the last key feature that I've been wanting to build to make this what should have been like the 1.0 I wanted, where Coppice is at the point where it's got all the features that I really wanted it to have, but unfortunately you always have to ship with a bit less than what you wanted. So regarding the symbols, so you're seeing symbols here, the crop and image rotation. Now I will probably actually recreate these, and there's a very good reason why I recreate these, because I could just use, if I bring up SF symbols, I could just use these as is, and in some cases I have. So I believe I don't believe I'm using as is, but I haven't really edited. So I believe in, if you are linking, I believe this link symbol, I have not actually done much with that to change it, but a lot of these others I have. And the reason I have is because I'm an old school Mac person. So all the icons I do, I try to make them pixel aligned. And SF symbols, like, it's a great resource, but it was designed by font designers, people who design all the typefaces and so on. So it's designed to like be vectors that infinitely scale, but the problem is that only really works at large sizes. So when you get to smaller sizes, you start getting, and the small sizes are like down here on the left hand side where things start blurring. You can see, can you see how there's a bit of, I mean, I'm hoping that is zooming in on the stream, but there is a bit of a glow. In fact, what I can do, if I take a screenshot there, let's open preview. I zoom in. So can you see how this isn't very precise around here? You can see there's like a half pixel, well, maybe like a 1/10 of a pixel there, and like 3/4 of a pixel there, so it isn't pixel aligned. Let me do the same for the folder in Coppice. Notice how much crisper it is. Now this doesn't matter too much on Retina. You can sort of get away with it. On some icons I can still see the blur even on Retina, but if I bring it over to one of my external displays, this is a non-Retina display. Now that is SF symbols that is using actual SF symbols. If I bring over Coppice and do the same, this is my redrawn SF symbols, and you can see just how much crisper it is. So it's just one of those little things of most people may not notice, but I do. Especially as I have displays that are not Retina, and to be frank, most people having external displays probably have external displays that are not Retina. People with Mac Minis and so on probably do, and it's just one of those little bits of attention to detail. So what I usually do is I see just how bad is this problem, especially on non-Retina displays. And if it looks like this, I'm recreating the icon. Apple may be happy shipping this. I am not. Like there are other bits where you may say, oh, why haven't I made something better because Apple has? And those are the areas that Apple is not happy shipping. But icons like this that is where I draw the line, and I will recreate them. I mean, I did do a blog post. find was... Alright, it's one of the earliest blog posts I did. Ah, yes. Designing for macOS Big Sur. And down here at the bottom, I have this image here, which if I open this in preview, and I zoom it in a bit more. So these are the toolbar icons, and at the top are the SF Symbols versions for sidebar and toolbar, and below are the versions that I've recreated. You see the dimensions may not match up precisely, they may be slightly different. They capture the spirit of SF Symbols, but they just look so much crisper and so much cleaner. And honestly, when you see them side by side with apps that are just using SF Symbols as is, it makes such a difference to the app, at least in my opinion. And because this is my app, I can decide what I spend the time on, and stuff like this is something that I spend the time on. So when we actually get to doing the icons, I'll probably be recreating them on stream, because we're not just doing coding on here, we're doing all the design. About the only thing that we won't be doing is anything where there's sensitive information, so we won't be dealing with support requests and emails and stuff like that, but pretty much everything else where nothing is particularly sensitive information, it's just designing and developing, then we'll be doing it here on stream, and that includes icons. So hopefully that answers your question. So let's build out a rough plan of what we want to do. So one of the key things is we need to work out data model. We're going to need a data model for storing hotspots. And there are potentially going to be two things with this. For rectangles and ovals, just store the rect. But for the polygons, we need to store an array of points. And this is where things can potentially get complicated, because do we ultimately store the rectangles and ovals as an array of points as well and deal with it that way, or do we make them two completely different things? Because they need to work together, because you could have on the same image a rectangular hotspot, an oval hotspot, and a polygon hotspot. So we need to work out exactly what we are going to do there. We need to build a hotspot view, and this needs to have an editing mode, which itself needs to have we'll do these hotspot editor. So the hotspot view to so yes, a rectangle is another polygon. The reason they are being split out is that when you start editing a polygon, let's say you've drawn a pentagon. With the polygon tool, when you click on the point and drag it, it will just drag that point. All the other points will stay in the same place. when you drag a rectangle or oval, it is going to actually resize that rectangle. So it's going to shift the adjacent points. So, I mean, I suppose there is a argument to be made of, if you have a polygon, do you want to essentially resize, like scale up that polygon? I suppose you could toggle between them as modes. So what I was thinking is that when you are in this mode for editing, in the actual editor, like down here, there would be some sort of bar down here. A bit like when you're editing, when you have a image or something, when you are editing like a PDF, if you're in a PDF in Safari, and down the bottom you get all your zoom controls and open stuff. So there would be a toggle here where you could toggle what sort of polygon you want to make. So you'd be toggling between a rectangle, a circle, or a polygon, or just a polygon, and then you could just start drawing. But if you click on an existing one, you can just move it around. You can resize it, so you'll be able to click on here, and if it's a rectangle or an oval, you would see it actually scaling down. But if it's a polygon, it's just that point that would change. So that is the approach I'm going for. Now, it could be that they're always stored as polygons. It does make things a bit simpler, storing rectangles and circles as just a rect. Because all the circle will be is, you see the rectangle like this, but the circle will just be drawn in the middle of it. So rather than this whole thing being coloured in this colour, you'd see like an internal colour, which is the oval. But yeah, we'll have a think of that once we have jotted down what we actually want to do. So for the hotspot view, when you're actually viewing this, we need to display them. Clicking highlight on hover, and clicking should invoke link. For the hotspot editor, toggle between hotspot type. We also want to display hotspots. Size, angles, size, ovals. Polygon points. Hotspot. That's just clicking and dragging, and select hotspot link. So if two regions overlap, there would probably be a Z order. And what I would probably do is the last polygon that, like when you edit a hotspot, or you move a hotspot rather, it would pop to the front. So that would be the one that is in front, so that when it is triggered, that is the one that is triggered when they're overlapping. I don't think I need Z order controls. I think that's probably doing a bit too much. It's more an implicit thing. I mean, there's like Z ordering in the canvas, but again, it is whatever you selected at the most. What you can do is just shift one out the way and drag it. Like, it's a bit more work to say, okay, I've got a link behind here and I want it on top, so I've got to shift the big one out the way, shift the small one out the way, move the big one back, move the small one back. But it seems easier just having that for now and not having like lots of additional controls in, because when you do, then Z ordering becomes a key element that you've got to really think a lot about, rather than something that, oh, I've just got to toggle this. So it's something that if I just allowed the simple like the cave person thing where you just drag, drag, drag and drag, and it's like, this is the last one, drag back, it makes it possible. It keeps things basically simple. And yes, it's a bit annoying, but if it's something that a lot of people start having issues and complaining about, then I can sort of add the Z order controls at that point. But for now, it's trying to keep things fairly simple. Right, so have a thing. Let's try and work out some degree of data model, because the thing is, the interaction for these is going to be different. So rectangles are going to be simple. If there's a rectangle that you draw on, so you click and drag and it draws a rectangle, you can click on any of the points to resize any of the corners, like resize the entire rectangle from any of the corners. You can move it around, and when you're clicking on it, you click anywhere inside the rectangle and it registers as a click. The oval, everything is going to be the same, except when you view it, when you click on it, it's only going to interact if you click in the oval of the rectangle. And I am going to have to remember how to do some geometry to work out whether you're inside an oval inside a rectangle, because I don't think I've done that in a long time, and I don't think I've even done it in code, so I'll need to work out that, unless Graphics has it already. I know how to do it for a circle, I just don't know how to circle in a square, I just don't know how to do it for a oval. I'm not sure whether I would make it like double clicking to start editing should go into hotspot mode, because if you are editing here, you can still click on a link, like even if you are editing, so you can still click on stuff. If you want to actually select something, you hold down Option and click on the link. So I'd want it so that you could go in and edit and still actually change things. And one thing I would like to do on images is potentially when you go in and edit, this description box here maybe have it so it can appear at the bottom here, and maybe have some options where you can toggle, do you want the description displaying on this image or not? So the view mode would be more about editing view things. So you go to hotspot mode, and then that will cause sort of the bar to appear at the bottom so that you could actually change things. Now the thing there is, do I want to make that bar so you could shift that around? Possibly, a bit like on the iPad where you get the pencil editing tools from Pencil Kit. So I'd want to move that around. So, hi Uli. What I would be, so I will show you what I'm imagining for the oval. Got a hotspot here. And what you would have is we've got an ellipse. So I resize that. So what it would look like is you are in your you're in view mode here, and you've got your ellipse, and then you go into edit mode, and it would show a bounding box around the oval. Oh yeah, I know the circle, like working out a circle is Pythagoras. The issue is that this is not a circle. This is an oval. So I need to work out, are you clicked inside an oval? Now there are ways I know that I can imagine a way to do that, which is you basically square the rectangle, adjust the point by the same amount. So you'd basically, one way that you can do this is you've got your rectangle here, so you know the width, and you could basically say, okay, this is so big, so what we'll do is we'll take the points here, we'll scale that up so it's a square, we'll scale, so you've clicked this point here, so it's midway between, that's now midway in the square, and then we can just see, is the point in sort of the squared version of the rectangle inside the circle, and then you can determine it that way. But yeah, doing a bitmap and checking the alpha is certainly another option, especially as we have drawn this. So there are different ways of doing it. I mean, I may go for the approach of like squaring it so you can work on a circle, just because it's purely maths. You don't need to actually draw the bitmap, so it also makes the drawing a bit easier because I can just draw directly onto the view rather than having to draw to an image that then I draw to the view that I can reference on the image. So yeah, there are ways to get around that. I mean, for the polygon, that's a bit easy because that's all straight lines. So that's just seeing, is something with in a bounded box. I mean, you could, oh, that's a fair point. I have just had a thought. Aha, it does. Why do it myself when I could have Apple do it for me? I just remembered you can actually check whether a point is inside a Bezier path, and a Bezier path can have a can have curves. So let Apple do it. As always, you can come up with all these great solutions, and the answer is always let the multi-trillion-dollar company do the work for you. So yeah, this so yeah, for actually resizing a oval, the controls will be like this. So you're actually resizing a rectangle because, again, in this Bezier path, getting it to draw an oval inside a rect is pretty easy. I mean, I think it's like one of the main initializers. You say, here's a rect, draw an oval inside of it, and it goes, okay, here you go. And it also makes manipulation easy because you're just resizing a rectangle. People are already familiar with that. The polygons, like I say, are a bit more complicated because there's the whole thing of, oh, I've got a polygon here, so I've got a point here, a point here, a point here, and I'm going to drag it down and overlap. So it's sort of this. So you've got this point here. In fact, if I just let's just so this written a bright blue. This, yeah. So if they were to draw, oh, yeah, probably a bit too big. So if they had it like that, and you've got it going along there like that, but and you go up there. Now let's say they had a point here. So they've got there, and maybe it goes up and down. So you've got like 5 sides, but what if they actually moved that point down and you dragged like that? So it's like this bit is inside, this bit is inside, and this bit is inside. What I might be tempted to do is mark these such ones as invalid. They'll probably come up in red when you start dragging it over, so that you can't overlap them. I mean, there's no potential reason why you couldn't do this, because I believe NS Bezier path will just color this in. And you could click like that. So yeah, I suppose, I mean, it's less work just letting people do that, because yeah, making interesting layouts and interesting shapes would certainly be possible doing this. So yeah, I think that would maybe, yeah, I think I will allow that, because it's more work to not allow it. So I might as well allow it and at least see what it feels like. But yeah, in terms of storing, so what we are doing in terms of storing our crop rects, we are storing them, if we go to our image page content, we're storing them here, and these are actually being stored as metadata here. Okay. So what we definitely want to, well, let's go for the polygons, because the polygons are actually the easiest to determine how to store, because that is just going to be an array of points. The points are going to be origined in the top left, and it's going to be offset from the actual image. So if you actually create say an image in the create a hotspot in the top left, regardless of the type of hotspot, if you create it in the top left and then you crop to just be the bottom right of the image, that hotspot's still going to remain there, but it's not going to be visible. So we're not going to shift hotspots around as you crop. We're going to scale them up as you resize the image on a canvas, so that they are like proportionally they stay the same thing. So a hotspot that is covering like 100 by 100 pixels on a 200 by 200 pixel image, if you double the size so that it's visible, like visually 400 by 400, then it should cover 200 by 200. It should scale up the same amount. But when you crop, then it's possible to just crop some hotspots off, and they will appear again when you uncrop it. So we're going to just set these as points from the raw image from the top left, and it's just going to be an array of points in the order from start to finish that they should be drawn. Now we can do that for both an oval and a rectangle. So for the rectangle, we can do it as a series of points. It's just the interaction is going to be different, and it actually gets a bit more complex because rather than just moving 1 point, you are going to have to move 3 points. Well, up to 3 points, between 2 and 3, because when you click, say, the bottom right, you're going to be shifting at the bottom right and, let's say, the top right, or the bottom right and the bottom left are all 3. So there's only going to be 1 point that remains unchanged. The oval is the same. It is mostly how it is drawn and the hit area. So it's a question of, do we just have 2 interaction modes? So you've got the rectangle mode where we just store it as a rectangle, and the polygon mode where you store it as an array of points, or do we store them all as an array of points and then the type, and then actually determining how you tweak them ultimately comes down to the view. So the model is always just an array of points, and everything else is just, we look at the type to see how exactly we tweak things. Now, an argument against just doing it as a series of points is that if you do it as a series of points and you're just moving the points, that's fine, you're dragging a point. But if you are dragging a rectangle, you need to know how you are, like which thing you are moving, because you need to know, am I moving the bottom right point to the left or to the right, so I know which other points I'm moving and in which directions, and whether I'm changing the X and the Y on those. So thinking about it, like we could force it so that it has to store the points in same order, but it just seems a little fragile to me. So I think it might be safer storing them as separate things. A rectangle with the rect, an oval with the rect, and polygons are just arrays of points. It's a data a little more complex, but it ultimately makes everything else a lot simpler and a lot clearer, and makes the data a lot more explicit. Does anyone in chat have any thoughts on that? Whether that sounds like a reasonable view of things? Because I mean, those are the only 2 options. Everything is an array of, because we have to store whether it's a rectangle, an oval, or a polygon anyway. That has to be stored. It's just, how do we store what the positions are? And polygons have to be stored as an array of points. I suppose a rect representation makes sense, because then it can also validate it. Yeah, because then it can validate whether it is a rectangle. Because it can check these points and make sure that, okay, we've got these points, make sure that, like, if we go top left, top, right, bottom left, we can make sure OK is point 1 and point 2 on the same Y, but different X's, and then our points 2 and 3 on the same X, but different Y's, and 3 and 4 on the same Y, but different X's, and then 4 and 1 on the same X, but different Y's. And make sure that the difference between them is all the same. So you can do that and validate it, and then convert it into a rect, and then the view just deals with the rect, and then when it writes it back, it is going to be correct. And the other thing is just throw in the points and get out the bounding rect of all the points, which should be correct. It's a bit less validation there, but it means that you bound the whole thing. And while there is less validation, it's like, what would happen if the validation failed? Oh no, don't worry, Steve, it's going to be working from the same origin. It will all be working from the top left, so all of this is working from the top left origin. All the data is always being saved for the top left origin. So the crop rect is working like that as well. All the views will be flipped, so that works fine. Yeah, I think I won't actually just do any validation. What I may just do, I mean, I could do the validation and just show up a warning, a bit like when you open, say, a Pages file or a Keynote file or something, and it opens up, or like a Photoshop file, and it says, like, these fonts are missing, or something, like, something is wrong, so I'm going to adjust things to make things better. So what I could do is validate it, make sure it's fine, and if it isn't fine, then I just, like, the points, maybe one of them has become corrupted and it's a bit askew. What I can just do is, I mean, I could be clever and do error correcting. Actually, no, you can't do error correcting because you don't have enough information. I could just do a bounding box around them. So say one of them has shifted a bit. So say, if we delete this, let's say this point here has shifted up to here somehow in the data. Maybe it's got corrupted on disk or something. Well, in that case, I've got this point here, this point here, this point here. So I pass them all in, and what I basically do is just do a bounding box that is there, containing all of the points. So that would be how I'd correct it. And that's how I just maintain that, okay, we've got these points, I can produce something useful out of them. Because for the polygon, well, the points are points. They're just going to be point there, point there, point there, point there, point there, and connect the dots. But for the rectangle, like, the points have to make a rectangle. For the oval, the points have to make a rectangle. So I think if I do that, I think it works. The points are going to be pixel based off the image. So, like I say, if we get rid of all of this, so you have your hotspot here. That is going to be, the origin is going to be that distance there and the size. Now, if you were to, on the canvas, scale this up, all these sizes will be scaled with it. That is a fair point. I would probably have to. Yeah, I think it is going to make sense to have the editor snap to pixels on the image. But then if you scale it up, you may have a low-res image that you want to scale up and then just go over a certain area of that low-res image. So maybe it does want to just be... Yeah, I mean, fractional pixels works. But then when it's drawn on screen, it wouldn't be like it would be rounded so that it draws correctly on screen, because you're going to be able to take this and resize it, and it's never going to be like 100% accurate over what you exactly wanted it to be. It's going to shift by pixels because it needs to draw over it. So if you take this and scale it all the way down, it's still going to be a crisp thing that you are displaying. It is just going to be shifted a bit. You may end up with overlap if you have a lot of stuff on there. So there's, I mean, it's something that you could do, but you're never practically going to do because it's not going to be very usable. So we will see how things go that way. Yeah, because if you had something small, you can draw over and you can have fractional pixels. Yeah, I think just doing it as it is going to be based off the pixel size, but it is going to be fractional pixels, I think is the best way of doing it. I mean, the other thing to note that is going to be interesting here is that unlike the crop editor where we are shifting the image to its full size, we won't be doing that with the hotspot editor. So this image could be scaled down and you are drawing stuff over a scaled image, and on the canvas you're going to be drawing stuff over a scaled image. So we need to adjust that way anyway. So I think having it stored as fractional pixels makes a lot of sense. Now, what it might be worth doing is actually picking, rather than storing it as a floating point number, picking a specific accuracy that we're going to do. So let's say we're going to go down to 1,000th pixel. Probably more than we need, but what I would just do then is when I store it, I'd multiply by 1,000 and store an integer, so that it just keeps the data a bit safer that way. But you always want to be careful storing too many floating point numbers to disk and then reading them in and storing them to disk again, because computers. So yeah, I think that is a pretty reasonable approach. So we're going to store everything, right, so store as type plus rate of points. We're going to need a view model. Select Ovo. Correct. Validates. Okay. I think this is looking pretty reasonable. Right, so I'm going to take a 2-minute break just to refill my water glass. And when we get back, we will start implementing some of the data model side of things and see if we can get that implemented today, so that on Monday we can start actually using that data. So I will be right back in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back. I am now fully refreshed with a fresh glass of water, so we can get started on working on the data model for our image linking thing. Before we get started, as usual, I put out a tweet just before I come back from having a break, just letting people know how the stream is going and encouraging them to come and follow. And one of the images I put up was an image here of all the stuff we'd written up for what we're going to work on. And one thing I always like to do, especially for anything that is relating to like Coppice or anything related to my company, is to make sure stuff is fully accessible. And the problem is I'm rushing out this tweet and I'm thinking, well, really I should be putting all the text of this in the description. And do I have time to type that all up? Oh, I'll put the headings in so at least those are in. And then I remembered, oh yes, I am on macOS 12. Drag and select, copy paste, and it's all in there. So yes, macOS 12, a massive win for improving accessibility of images. If you have an image with text and you're posting it on Twitter, just open it up in preview and do a copy paste. Therefore, you can make your images fully accessible to everyone. So, let's take a look at our code over here. What we are going to need is an image hotspot type. Let's there's going to be a type oval, type oval, type polygon. I say what it is. You're going to be created with kind, and then they're going to have point. Actually storing them better. Page. Peel representation. Get. Item. Okay, so I just get peel representation. I just want a kind. Oh. And what I would like to do is well, this is a dictionary. So want a var dictionary any. That a string. So for our dictionary representation, we're going to return our kind, stuff.kind.row value. We're going to have our points, self.point, map it, dictionary, where we're going to have x going to be $0.x1000. That is going to So the reason I chose plist over codable, part of it was familiarity. Part of it is that codable, codable is good, but it has its limitations. Property lists do have advantages over, for example, JSON. Now you can use codable to serialize as a property list and so on. Another reason is that I just get more control by not using codable. Codable gives me a few benefits, but it ends up being not that much less code, while being a lot less control. So, for example, Sophia, I have these model files. Now, what I do here is that when I generate a plist representation, I store these model files in. But when I'm actually storing to disk and generating the data, what happens is I go through the plist representation. And if I find anything that isn't a model file, I just add it as a value. But if I do find a model file, I add it here under files, and I get that file's plist representation. The plist representation is basically the file name and the metadata, and I believe the type. And it stores those things in the plist. So it's basically swapping out the value, which is this model file object here, for the plist representation, but then storing the files so that I can then add the files to the file wrapper to store it to disk. So it just makes things a bit easier in that regard, because then I can generate a full file wrapper that I save to disk. In other places, like I said, it's one of those things that I could have used codable, but I'm just A, more used to this, and B, it just gave me that flexibility to do all these tweaks and to handle more precisely the data that I'm storing and how I store it later on. So, I mean, the other thing is that generally I'm not initializing from in many places I'm not initializing from representation. So for example, a page, I get the plist representation, but rather than initializing from it, I have update from plist representation. Now what this allows me to do is that if I wanted to duplicate this, and I believe I am doing this for duplication. Yeah, duplicate pages. I get the plist representation and I modify a few bits of it, but then I'm creating a new page and I just call update from plist representation. And all of those properties are assigned. I'm not sure if I'm on this from elsewhere for other reason. No, just in duplicate pages. But it allows me to, I mean, for example, reverting something. I can take an existing object and revert it to a previous state potentially. I don't really do that because that's like storing a lot of data. I mean, you could in theory use this to build up an undo redo. I don't do that because I do that on a per property basis and use key paths to handle that. But yeah, it's one of those things. If Codable's nice, it's just sometimes you need a bit more flexibility, and Codable can give you that, but I'm more comfortable getting the flexibility I need with existing tools. So we have our image hotspot, picture representation. So guard let kind string equal representation kind string. Let kind equal kind raw value kind string else L. Actually, that after. We'll do these as separate things. Technically, I could put all these in the same guard statement, but guard let points array. Actually, I may be able to do points as an array of string int. That. Want is points array. I'm going to map this to don't want to do a map actually. I'm going to do a for. Reason for that is that I want to be able to return nil if it's wrong, because these should all have an X and a Y, and if they don't, then that's a problem. I want this to be throwable instead, so I can actually error. No, model. I think I do want to actually throw. Document. Uh, 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 so in terms of a point being invalid, that will be determined later on. The data, the reason I'm wanting to throw here is, what if the X doesn't exist? What if the Y doesn't exist? In those cases, I'm just going to refuse to open the document. If the X is like the wrong number, if it has been edited and it doesn't make any sense or anything like that, that is something that can be handled at a higher level, because that only really becomes relevant when you're actually displaying it. And at that point, it can sort of validate it that way. Because again, there'll be a thing of, you could open a rectangle and technically the points in there are not a rectangle. So in those cases, I should validate it, see that it's not a rectangle, and do a fallback. And the fallback in the rectangle cases, or make a rectangle that bounds all the points and potentially highlight it and warn the user of that. In the case of points being outside the image, probably same thing again, warn that some things like the data is corrupt and it has shifted them to make them better, and it will highlight them and it will move any points inside of the inside the image size. Now there are things that you need to do, such as if it's just moving one point, great, that's fine. If you're moving lots of points, do you just shift it? Do you have to scale it down and so on? So it does get kind of complicated how you do the recovery stuff. So I'll have to work that out, but I mean, that is what I would probably do, is recover it at the point where it is being displayed. So trying to work out where I want to put the errors. Let's do them in here. that? Fair point. I'm divided by 1,000 anyway. Then I'm baking the inaccuracy in. Suppose floating points. Oh, that accuracy. I just want to store these as an integer regardless. Am I overthinking this around floating point maths? I may be doing. So rather than storing as, well, I'd still store as CG points, but rather than the actual data being, like for example, 100.001, I'd actually store it like that. And then when I actually use it in the UI, then I just do divide it by 1,000, get the thing that I actually want. That's what I want. But it's a question of whether I am overthinking. Actually, I am overthinking it. Do you want to know why? I store the crop rect as floats. I'm storing positions of pages as floats. This is overthinking this massively. Rather than doing it like that, we'll do CG. I wonder. I'll still use NS string. NS string from point. An array string. Point string, and then we can do let point equal point string. Get a point string. Get rid of this whole accuracy thing. I am overthinking the data accuracy with all that. So that is all implemented. What we are going to have up here is crop rect, which is going to have, we've got crop rect, we're going to have an array of these image hotspots. That's a fair point. The image hotspot also needs to say where it is linking to. For which we URL. Do now we don't need to do it as a page link because we can get that from, yeah, we can't do it as a page link because you can link to things that aren't pages. You can link to external resources. So we'll have that as a URL. URL self dot option var station. I'm going to do station if let link dictionary representation link equal link station point a at kind of points and if let link equal station link as URL of dot now. Always need to so we'll just do dictionary representation link as URL. And it will be initialized to nil if it is not. So we have a type hotspot, position, and where it is stored. We don't need to set it here because it will be automatically initialized to nil there, and you're never going to create an image hotspot that already has a link. You're always going to create the hotspot first because it doesn't make sense otherwise. So dictionary representation. That is all working. So what we need to do next time is we are going to probably I do need to write some unit tests for these, but that might be a bit dull for the stream. So what I might do is do that off stream, or at least start it off stream on Monday if I have the time. Get some unit tests written for that. Then what we're going to need to do is add it as a property on here. What is going to be a problem is under redo, because you're going to be on every time you yeah, this is not going to play nice with undo redo. I might be tempted to change this to a struct, simply because it forces me to replace the entire image hotspot array every time, and that will force me to that will make undo work a lot better, because I don't want to make it possible to change this, because then you won't be able to undo it. But if I'm changing the whole image hotspot, yes, I've got to reconstruct the UI and stuff every time that you do an undo or redo, but that's a price worth paying, I think. So yeah, I think we are in a good place. So what we will do, I will add myself a to, yeah, and we will have a look at the stream on Monday and actually do a bit more of this data model work, get it implemented, and then we will start looking at how we can utilize some of this data in the UI. So until then, I hope you will all give me a follow. If you've really enjoyed this stream, I hope you will subscribe and get access to all the great emotes and other features. The VOD, if you haven't managed to catch the whole stream, will be up immediately after this stream on Twitch, and should hopefully be up on Monday or Tuesday on YouTube. And till then, I hope you all have a very good rest of your weekend, and I will see you on Monday at 2 PM UK time. Goodbye.